Hi, welcome to Smith and Grezzy. This is our March podcast. We're following a big postbag, in fact, a huge one. We're going to discuss the thorny issue of adjudicators. We had one particular email requesting anonymity, and so those words will be spoken by my good wife, Leslie. Over to you, Leslie, on the start of this email.
Competitive brass banding is built on a simple principle. Results must be credible. Every band that enters a contest invests months of rehearsal, significant financial cost, and enormous personal commitment. The least they should expect in return is that the result is determined by someone with unquestionable musical authority.
So, we've got a question there for the listeners. Do we think we are being judged by someone with unquestionable musical authority? What do you think, Sandy?
That's a huge question. It's a sort of the crux of the matter for me. We've said this before, say it again. I think to be a credible judge, you have to have displayed your musical ability as a player.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about brass banding.
No.
As a player, as a conductor, again, we're not just talking about brass banding. And maybe a composer or arranger, right? A writer. Okay. Yeah. But the main ones for me are player or conductor, right? If you're going to be, if we as a movement are going to be judged by a musician, that musician has to prove themselves to us that this is someone worth listening to the opinion of. So the only way you can do that is by, listen to these players playing, either in bands or as soloists or in orchestras or whatever else, right? What if we go back, what can this person prove their worth as a musician? Yeah. Right? And that is the crux of it for me. Is that I think that little bit about unquestionable musical authority, that comes through playing music, conducting music.
As you know, Sandy, I just recently dusted my tuba off and I played in a lower section contest.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the judges, one of which was unquestionable, is a chap I greatly admire, works up in Scotland, has done a huge amount of work with lower section bands, very successfully, taught on the youth band in Scotland, and he's a composer, arranger of high skill. But then I read the other one, and the other judge, which will remain nameless, is questionable. How can I put it? His claim to fame was that he passed his grade 8 at school, younger age than anybody else. I was flabbergasted at that.
See, there's quite a few.
That's very questionable.
There's quite a few CVs that I've read recently, and you think, okay, these things that are listed on these CVs have nothing to do with this person's musical ability.
No.
Right?
Have you got your grade 8?
I never sat a grade exam in my life.
Nor did I.
Not that that's anything to be either proud of or not, but I think you've got to start questioning the suitability of someone who, as one of their achievements on a CV for adjudicating, lists that they've got grade 8 at a younger age than anyone in their school. I mean, I've got my cycling proficiency.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I mean? That sort of thing. 50 metres breaststroke, all that jazz. That's a bit flippant, but it bears no relation to, I've auditioned people at colleges, right?
Yeah.
Huddersfield, Salford, the Royal Northern, when I was teaching there. Grade 8 on paper, right?
Yeah.
And they couldn't play. They couldn't play. And
they get used to playing a certain
well,
few pieces, don't they?
you learn 3 pieces. Let's not get into the grade thing because
No.
there's pros and cons all the way. But if that's an achievement that is worthy of, if it's scraping the barrel a bit, if you're looking at musical achievements, you know, I got a grade 8.
Yeah.
You know, it is. It's like Chris Hoy, cyclist, saying I passed my cycling proficiency when I was 10. You know, big deal. Nobody cares, right?
No.
I see him on a track in the Olympics winning gold medals. That proves he's a good cyclist.
Absolutely.
You know, I think some of this stuff that's, you know, and people are bumming up their own sort of other educational achievements. Nobody cares, right? What have you done as a musician?
Yeah.
Right? Not what have you set up in a school or whatever else. And I know it's laudable, but it's nothing to do with your ability as a musician.
Absolutely.
And I think it's one of the problems with banding at the moment.
Yeah.
Is that there are certain people trying to make themselves adjudicators. Yeah. And it never used to happen.
No.
And I think we need, you know, one thing that really bugs me is they think that only top section bands deserve like the best, the cream of adjudicators, the best musicians. Lower down the ranks, it's just a bit of a free-for-all. And it seems to be the ones with the loudest voices or the, you know, putting themselves forward, let's say, get the work. Or, you know, and I think the lower section bands, this can lead to all sorts of problems. You've got dodgy results maybe in certain places. Yeah. And you begin to question whether the people that are judging can actually hear what is obvious when you listen. Yeah. And whether they're actually good enough. And I think the lower section bands get a raw deal.
Well, to me, the best judges should be down there because you really need to be a good judge down at that level. Because a lot of performances can be very similar, but in different ways.
Yeah, but we look back at a list that I went through. I went through the Yorkshire. I just picked Yorkshire, Midlands, and I went on to Northwest areas, going back the turn of the 20th century into the 21st, back 2 or 3 decades. And the lower section bands had the same judges as the top section.
Yeah.
Right? So you would have David Reid and Roy Newsom and, you know, Peter Parks and Walter Hargreaves and all these people, right? Big hitters. But they were judging the lower sections as well. So the lower sections were getting the benefit of an absolute expert opinion. Who had been there, done that, got the T-shirt, knows what a band sounds like, has proved what a band sounds like. I mean, even going back, people these days, people might not even remember David Reid as an adjudicator, but David Reid was a fantastic cornet player as well back in the day.
He was.
You know, so he's proved his worth. And, you know, Roy Newsom, brilliant musician. We both knew Roy really well. Yeah. Organist, composer, everything, you know, good, you know, really knew his stuff. You were getting these people judging in the lower sections. These days, it seems to be, they're learning it. We'll give them a try. I think lower section bands deserve better.
I agree.
They should be up in arms sometimes.
Yeah. So, Sandy, I'm going to let Leslie carry on reading the next bit, which will, again, lead to some conversation.
Unfortunately, that expectation is increasingly being undermined. Across the movement, there is a growing concern that adjudicators are being manufactured rather than earned. Training schemes and development pathways have their place, but the uncomfortable truth is that you cannot manufacture gravitas.
That word, Sandy, gravitas, it's a great word.
It is good. Yeah, and I think that, well, we were just talking about that there. This is the problem. I think that there seems to, we have a culture at the moment, and this never used to happen, right? We had a smaller number of adjudicators who really were trusted. Now we've got people wanting to make themselves adjudicators, as if it can be learned. And you know, we can teach you a few tricks and you can be a judge. And so it's a free for all. Anybody wants a bit of pin money on a Saturday afternoon.
We went to Huddersfield for a good old listen, didn't we, that weekend at the areas? And the amount of people who came up to me and you and said, "Who's these judges?" Quite a few.
I think for me, it all boils down to one thing. What have you done as a musician? What can you prove you have done, right? That would make me want to take heed of your opinion.
And it's not a case of helping out a band here and there. It's a case of sustained, successful playing.
This is
winning
another
contests
thing
under the greatest conductors. That's what I'm after.
I think even being a successful player and winning, and if we're talking about winning contests, we're only really talking about the Open, the Nationals, the Europeans, aren't we?
Yeah,
Anything else is minor, right?
Yeah, it is.
But there are a hell of a lot of CVs knocking about where people say, you know, they played with, you know, Black Dyke, Foden's, whoever else, you know, and all it means is that they helped them out on a concert.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's,
they're not there week in, week out, that's for sure.
It's not doing it for, you know, 10, 15 years, winning a load of stuff and working constantly under the best conductors. Yeah. It's helping out at the last minute because they're short of a second baritone or a third cornet or something, you know. And there's a lot of that goes on as well. You can read through these CVs easy, you know. Yeah. And also, it's easy to spot the ones who have really done stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
For me as well, let's say they've had a fairly weak playing CV, but yet they've done okay at conducting. I want to know if they know how to get a band sounding like a band should. There's too many people now don't have a clue what that band should sound like.
You get people who are in positions of responsibility, let's say, and whose way of making music, I think, is just crass, vulgar.
Yeah.
So what you end up getting then is people saying, "This is how I train my band to play," right?
Yeah.
And it's basically brute force and ignorance. Yeah. And then that's passed on to people who think that's the way to go, and they conduct their bands with brute force and ignorance. And there are very, very few consistently musical conductors in the movement, I think.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of this brute force and ignorance at the minute, and I just think it's ugly. Yeah.
I just want them to demonstrate that they know what they're doing, and sadly, I don't think they do sometimes.
Yes, it's the same question for me all the time. How can you prove to me that you're a good musician? Right? Recordings, whatever, the things you're playing on, solos you've recorded, you know, performances you've conducted that are worth listening to because they're musical and they make sense musically. Yeah. Rather than just, this is the loudest and fastest we can play, which seems to be a bit in vogue. Yeah. Regardless, I mean, the test pieces I thought that we picked for the 5 areas, the 5 sections, all should have made a chance for making music, and unfortunately, in some places it didn't. It was brute force and ignorance. Yeah. But that's a slightly different question. How is this gravitas earned? How do you earn the gravitas to think? So you've got good people thinking, yeah, I will accept a verdict from these people.
Yeah.
Because there was some areas you look at and you think, gee whiz, the people on the stage, 1 or 2 of them miles and miles in front of the people that are in the box.
Yeah.
As far as musical, as being what I would consider a really good, respected musician.
Yeah.
You know.
To me, you only win gravitas from your peers.
And a bit of longevity as well.
Yeah, a bit of longevity.
This idea that you can just, I'll be an adjudicator. I'll do some sort of secret training scheme, and this is another thing. I'm not still. It still seems a bit of a mystery as to why there are so many adjudicators listed and more being manufactured all the time.
Well, do you remember that conversation we had with Derek Broban just before Christmas? He was only asked to adjudicate contests once he'd won a national with Brighouse.
Yeah.
I was shocked when he told us that.
See, for me, it's not just about the contest thing or the conducting and contest and that. It's just about being a musician. There was last year a bit of a hoo-ha over Ian Bousfield judging at London, right? And it seemed to be the wrath of bands that weren't successful seemed to be directed at Ian rather than at the other two judges. Actually, Ian Bousfield, he's not been in bands for donkey's years. He doesn't know what he's on about. You think, hang on a minute, this guy has played. He's the principal. He was the principal trombone of the Halle, the LSO, the Vienna Philharmonic, for God's sake, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There's gravitas. There's musical ability, right?
And he's renowned the world over for being one of the finest exponents of his instrument.
We should be falling over ourselves to hear his opinion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there were various things I heard come back. Oh, he didn't write much, right? He didn't write much in his remarks. Well, I've seen the remarks. He writes sufficient. He's listening.
He's listening.
Right? But the thing is, and remember, and I sent you that years ago, this is what it used to be like. I remember telling you the story of Kevin Wadsworth, who I bumped into last week in the supermarket, actually. And in Kevin's house, he's only a mile away from me. In his toilet downstairs, there are the framed remarks from Connotations in 1977, right?
Yeah, I remember you sending me these.
Yeah, and they're fascinating, right?
Yeah.
The one of them is only a couple of paragraphs long.
Yeah.
Right? And I heard that, but I was there that day listening. It was absolutely gobsmacking, right?
And
the judges spotted it. They don't need to write. Nowadays, you have to dot every I, cross every T. You can't say anything critical. Everything has to be nice. And that was a succinct sort of a judgment on that performance, which just said, "This is magnificent."
At the end, he said, "I will remember this sound for the rest of my days."
Yeah,
that's what he said.
And I was there. God, I will and all, because it was just astonishing, right?
Yeah.
There's no need for writing reams and reams and reams, right?
No.
but it seems to be one of the things that's taught in inverted commas these days. You've got to write loads, right? And you've got to be positive in everything you say. And this causes problems, because I spoke to people in Huddersfield. I heard all 54 bands on the weekend in Huddersfield, right? And the amount of people that had come up to me. Can't understand why we ended 7th, 8th, 9th. The remarks are brilliant. They say how great it was, and then they put a 7th.
Yeah.
And this is part of the problem, because, well, I've said this before, if I put a band first, second, third, I want them to know why. If I put them 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, I want them to know why. So there will be criticism. And it's meant to, it's absolutely no good whatsoever to have
saying everything's
remarks.
Wonderful.
Well, to say everything's wonderful and then put a band 10th.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there seems to be this idea that all of this can be can be taught, and it's wrong to criticise. And it's for me, it's just wrong. The people that I would respect as judges would be people that I respect as musicians. It's that simple, right?
And
It
the
is
ones
that
who
simple.
Definitely got the gravitas.
Yeah. But if someone can say to me, this is what this person sounded like or sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Or if they're a conductor, right? This is how they shape their performances, either with a baton or with a trumpet, right?
Yeah.
That's to me what counts as a musician, not someone who's done a course and sort of learned how to do it.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I look at some of the matchups between judges and people on the stage, and I think, and the people on the stage who I do respect, and I've done it for a long time, and I think, why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself? Why are you being judged by people who are obviously nowhere near your competence and your musical ability, yet you're still doing it?
So there is the description of how gravitas is gained. So, Sandy, I'm going to go back to this email and let Leslie read the rest of it.
The role of an adjudicator has historically been reserved for individuals who have earned their authority through exceptional achievement as performers, conductors, composers, or educators. When such people speak from the box, bands might disagree with the result, but they really question the credibility of the person delivering it. That trust is now being eroded.
I actually agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because you're getting people speaking from the box, from the stage, sorry. And a lot of it is not very helpful. It's all, oh, you all did well. You all did marvellously.
Platitudes.
Yes. And I want to be told what bands are doing wrong so that we can work on it. Don't get me wrong, certain bands deserve the medals. They're usually in the top 3. But you're getting people who really shouldn't be in the box stood up there trying to lecture people that they're not as good as.
Yeah. But also what gets my goat is this idea that I've had a really tricky, and then you insert the name of instrument there, really tricky flugel solo today. If you're a flugel player, and give yourselves a clap, hey, and that, all of that garbage, you know.
Sandy, on the subject of is the trust being eroded, we had an interesting communication with a fella I've known for donkey's years. Martin Eastwood is formerly of Brighouse and Rastrick and Manchester Co-op bands back in the day. A man who's had loads of working experience working under legendary conductors in our movement.
Yeah.
This is what Martin said. I'll read this.
Okay.
Don't think the powers at B understand the damage that's caused by giving unknowns a shot at adjudication. It debases contesting and the will to bother with the time, effort and expense involved to be trained by people with pedigree for dubious outcomes. Yes, it does come down to the opinion, but let them be by proven people. Like it or not, contesting raises standards, hence the reason that bands have to strive to improve. Poor results debase this and undermine our lifeblood.
Yeah, I mean,
spot on that.
You can see people deciding, I just can't be bothered anymore with it. I'm packing in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And poor results do that. I mean, you have to maybe question also, do poor adjudications result in bands being either promoted or relegated unfairly?
Yeah.
There was an instance, and I think we can legitimately mention it. I mean, Elland band last year, so we're talking 2025 areas, was really hard done by.
Yeah.
In most people's opinion, right? And they were in danger of being relegated from the first section.
Yeah.
Right? I think they got third at the areas this year.
Yeah, they did. They played okay.
So they played fine. That sort of saved their bacon a bit. But
Yeah.
that anomaly of a result last year could have ended in catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right? You've also had the instance of bands being promoted through this aggregate system where 2 or 3 mediocre results gets you promotion.
Well, last year in the Midlands, I conducted a band. We came fourth, and 2 bands who came 5th and 7th in the first section were promoted.
Jesus.
And sure enough, they've come quite low down. It's nothing against them bands, I've got to say. It's just the system. And then I've got other instances where I know of a couple of bands who've literally been in the second section 1 year, gone up on average points, got a decent result in the new section, in the higher section, and gone up again. Now, that has happened to South Yorkshire Police this year.
Yeah.
They're literally going from the second section to the championship on the bounce. To me, it can't be a good recipe, that.
It's hard, and to be fair to Lee Baker's band, South Yorkshire Police, I heard them when we were both there at Sheffield at the Niagara Club the week before the areas, and I did the adjudications, the sort of talk about the pieces, and they were giving it a run out and all that sort of thing. They played very well.
They did.
They played very well, and you could tell then it was a decent band being well prepared, and thought, they're playing solidly. Keep it together, tidy it up, get a couple of rough edges off, and you'll be all right. And lo and behold, they were. I had them in the prizes, but they won it, right?
Yeah.
But there was one band there that I thought were quite hard done by. Horbury, I'll name them.
Yeah.
You know, they ended up 5th.
They were so musical.
They were. And that was a musical piece, the Waslebbit of Andy Wainwright's.
Yeah.
They were, in my opinion, which is only my opinion, and I totally get the fact that me sitting listening in an audience, knowing who's on stage, is nothing like being in a box.
No, I think.
Even though I heard all the bands, but I just thought I don't know where the judges, how they missed that. You know, how they missed that performance. It was. I thought it was.
It was classy.
It was the most musical performance of the day.
Yeah. And probably the best band sound for me.
Yeah.
And it just went straight over.
To take nothing away from South Yorkshire Police.
No.
They played a really solid band. Good, deserved, you know, to be way up in the prizes.
Yeah.
But there's things just not quite right, and you begin then to question. You've got to question the judges in certain ways. Do they have experience of playing at that level or above that level, which is ideally what you're after? You want people. I would like to see, you know, people like Dave King, Morgan Griffiths. Yeah. You know, these people
Gary
judging in the Gary Cutt in the first section. Yeah. You know, these people, you see, one of the arguments you'll get back is, these people are very experienced. They've done it for a long time, right? Well, that's a bit like, I've heard this phrase, the illusion of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
That people might mistake familiarity with something, with a topic, with adjudicating for mastery of it. Yeah. And again, I go back to this thing about, have your judges got the musical credentials to back up the sort of, I've adjudicated for 10 years, 15 years, whatever else. You know, big deal. It's, what are you like as a musician? Prove to me what you're like as a musician.
Okay, so back to the original email. Over to you, Leslie.
Some individuals are now appearing in adjudication boxes at levels that are clearly beyond their musical experience or standing within the movement. This is not a criticism of those individuals personally. Many are dedicated and well-meaning, but the responsibility lies with those who appoint them.
So that is a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. That who appoints the judges?
Right. Well, I've got a little bit of experience of this, and it is only a little bit. I went on the Yorkshire committee. I meant well. I wanted to stay on there, but I realised that us doing this podcast is a bit slightly a conflict of interest. So I withdrew my services. Who appoints these judges? Well, it's the area secretaries, them committees. And they are lovely, lovely people on these committees. They work ever so hard. But this is where the problem lies with me. And one of the reasons I came off that committee, because I didn't want the flack. I don't think they have enough experience to know who is who in the movement.
Well, the other thing that I know happens, and I've heard this from various people, is that certain people tout themselves round.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
To these area committees saying, "Oh, I love your contest. You know, I've always enjoyed listening, and blah, blah, and I'm here. If you ever want a judge, you know, I'd be more than happy to do it. And, you know, you've got a great running event here, all the usual things, you know." And putting themselves forward to do this sort of stuff. You know, to me, that is like that old Billy Connolly quote about politicians. The mere desire to be a politician should ban you forever from being one. You know, don't vote, it only encourages them. That sort of thing. You know, that people are like putting themselves forward. It's the only sort of discipline within banding you can blag your way through. Yeah. Right. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm gonna, I'm a cornet player. I'm gonna play, you know, the Ernest Tomlinson cornet concerto, or the Pandora, or some whatever it happens to be," right? Well, you've got to actually stand up and do it, and you'll fall on, you know, you'll either prove it or not by what comes out the bell end, right? Yeah. But as an adjudicator, you can blag your way in. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that is the answer to that. It is the area committees that pick, and the contest organisers who pick the judges. And I think that is an area that needs looking at. So, again, back to the original email, let Leslie read out the next part.
When appointing bodies fail to recognise the difference between competence and authority, the consequences are serious. Contest results directly influence promotion and relegation across the sections, shaping the competitive landscape for years to come. A single questionable adjudication can unfairly move bands up or down, altering opportunities, morale, and even the long-term survival of a band. In short, bad appointments create bad outcomes.
Yeah, well, we've already mentioned, Sandy, about bands zooming up the sections. You know, it has never gone well, that sort of thing.
No.
You know, with the exception maybe of Swinton years ago, but they had a bit of a genius in front of them, in David. So we've mentioned, you know, that that's another thing that needs looking at, unfortunately, the average points system.
That's a debate
really
for
needs
another
looking
day.
into.
But,
absolutely.
This idea of we have, you know, there seems to be a bit of a movement that we need more judges. We need more judges with different backgrounds. Within banding, we're talking. This is a small, tiny thing. But there seems to be a movement saying, "Oh, we need more judges, different opinions different ideas. No, we don't. We need a smaller cohort of judges who really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
With musicality and their musicality at the heart of it, right?
Yeah.
Not just somebody trying out or, I've not done judging, but I'll have a go and I'll learn as I go along. And the only way this is what you will get thrown back at us. Well, the only way to learn is to do it. You have to start somewhere and all this. But I just think if you've got someone who's, let's not shy away from calling a spade, right? You got somebody who's been a numpty player, right? Suddenly makes themselves an adjudicator. Yeah. What are they basing their opinion on? Their own player?
Yeah. And how can they give advice in the comments?
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
You have to prove yourself. Who's going to listen to me talking about rugby or football, right? Nobody, right? Because I was never competent enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't listen to golf, right? Commentaries on the telly and that, and you don't have me commenting on, that shot or that player or that whatever shot decision. Or you're listening to ex-pros, proper people, right?
Yeah.
And their professional insight into it, right?
Yeah.
I do, rugby is my thing, we know that. And you listen to this stuff, 6 days to just finish, it's been absolutely fantastic, right? The ups and downs of every team, right? And you listen to the opinions of ex-players, right? Real top-notch ex-players from all the countries. And you think, yes, I am listening to you because you know what you've proved. You know what you're doing.
Absolutely,
right? And that's what I want for us for banding. I want the opinions of people who have proved they know what they're doing.
So, Sandy, going back to the original email, bad appointments create bad outcomes. Leslie's going to read out the next part.
This problem is particularly troubling when it occurs at major contests connected with organisations such as the National Brass Band Championships of Great Britain and the British Open Championships, where decisions carry enormous weight across the entire contesting structure. No one disputes that the movement needs new adjudicators for the future, but progression should be exactly that, progression. Judging lower section contests, gaining experience and earning respect over time is the only credible pathway. What we should not accept is a system where individuals are fast-tracked into positions of authority they have not yet earned.
Sandy, it's that last paragraph that really grabs me there.
There's a lot of things to unpick in that. I'm not sure I quite agree with this little thing about judging lower section contests. This is where progression should be exactly that. Progression, judging lower section contests, gaining experience. That's okay. Right, but I have a problem. Like I've said, I have a problem with inexperienced judges judging local contests.
Yeah.
Right, to gain experience. I think any band that's in that sort of contest, wherever it is in the country, they deserve better than that. So I would. Again, okay, we're on to money now, aren't we? We're on to who's going to do this. It's pin money, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a sort of open contest for one association or another, where there's maybe bands from the fourth section to the first section, all mixed up playing a test piece, and then you pick out the best one, all that stuff. I don't want to see an inexperienced judge doing that. If they have to have one,
no. But on this email, Sandy, it does say what we should not accept is a system where individuals are fast-tracked into positions of authority. In other words, them judges need to be credible. down there.
Yeah, but I think we need to move towards having better quality judges in the lower sections.
Yeah.
As well. Because it's not just, they've won a few pots at second section, first section, they'll be all right judging third section. No.
Yeah.
I want to see top-notch people judging third section contests so that they can say, right, okay, this is fundamentally where you're going wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then you get people who can really do it, showing what's gone wrong and how to fix it. Not just somebody who's achieved slightly above. It's that's like the teacher who, teaches they're not very cricket. I used to teach the clarinet, for God's sake, right?
Yeah.
Teaching wider ops. And you think all you're doing is staying 3 pages in front of the kids, That's not good enough. That's not good enough, right? I want, if you've got an inexperienced young judge, especially someone who has no credentials really as a musician, judging a lower section, I want to see them sat with somebody who really knows their onions, who knows what they're doing, right? So that they can take control of that situation if it gets out of hand, or if it becomes, too difficult.
Yeah.
And some of this is given away in the platitudes that you get from the stage all the time. You can spot them a mile away, right? People scared to criticise, right? That's another matter altogether. But the original emailer is correct. Yeah, they are being fast tracked. They seem to be more and more adjudicators. It's like a sort of sausage factory of adjudicators we're getting. But you look at the CVs and what they've done. Let me hear you play. Let me hear you've played at any time. What have you done? Show me you playing in a really, really good band that is successful. Or better still, let me hear you play a solo.
Yeah.
But none of that. I don't even know some of these adjudicators what bloody instrument they played. Again, what's the gravitas as a musician? What have you done, right? And I'm sorry, but being an experienced adjudicator is relatively simple if you've got a bit of a brass neck.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the gravitas thing, doesn't it? But let's Leslie conclude the interesting email that we've had in.
In brass banding, reputation still matters. Experience still matters. Musical authority still matters. If the movement continues to dilute the standard required to sit in the adjudicator's box, it risks something far more damaging than a few disputed results. It risks losing the faith of the bands themselves. And once that trust disappears, the credibility of competitive brass banding disappears with it.
Well, Sandy, that's pretty bang on. I've enjoyed that email. We've been sat on it for a while, haven't we? And finally got the chance to say something. Obviously, when we were prepping for this podcast, I started... Obviously, people are going to gather that we're talking about ABBA.
Yeah.
The Association of Brass Band Adjudicators. Yes, we are, but we're talking in general as well.
Yeah, we are.
But there's a few things that really great with me is this last few weeks, prepping for this podcast, I've been reading everybody's CVs on the ABBA website. And some of them, like we've mentioned earlier, got spurious claims and, a bit indifferent. Some are brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, let's be, again, call a spade a spade. There's some brilliant people in ABBA. There
is.
They're not always, though, the ones whose names are constantly being mentioned. But there's also this other thing. Okay, apart from the people who are outside of ABBA altogether, right, who have maybe never been in it or, have for whatever reason. You did make a list, didn't you, of people outside of ABBA. You begin to wonder why maybe some of these people are not being, we don't see the names on important contest adjudications
Yeah.
more? Is
I'm
it because they
talking,
don't push themselves forwards?
Talking people like Ray Farr, Martin Winter, Gary Cook, David King, Ian Porthouse, Franz Violet, Philip McCann, James Gowley, Simon Johnson, the LSO, Gareth Small, the Halley, Linda Nicholson, Peter Christian, Nick Hudson, Martin Brabbins, Florin Didier, Katie Jones, Morgan Griffiths, Mark Walters. The list is massive.
But
It goes on and on and on.
Yeah, but they're all musicians that I would say have a proven track
They've all got
record as a
gravitas
musician.
for me.
Yeah,
They've all got it in abundance.
But there's people like that. Yeah, but also a lot of those people won't put themselves forward.
No.
But then you've got this other list that you made.
Yeah, I want to know. ABBA are very good at publicising good news. What I'm interested to know is, for instance, Philip Harper, Roger Webster, Stephen Roberts, Paul Holland, and Shona White, amongst others, have recently, in the last 3 years, left the organisation. Why has nothing been said about that? Why have them people left? I'd love to know.
Yeah. Why have they left?
If they're so good at putting news out, why are they not explaining?
Yeah. I mean,
it's all one-way traffic.
Those are all, again, I'm just reading the list again here. They're people. They
will have all sat at the top of the ABBA list for me.
The proper musical gravitas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. I would listen to the opinion.
I would, all day
of those
long.
People. Yeah. But then, again, this is what it boils down to for me, right? Has this person proved themselves as a musician to my satisfaction that I will listen to their opinion on something musical?
Yeah.
And I know what will happen now. We'll get, they'll be up in arms.
Oh,
right?
We'll get pelters from everywhere.
But I just think there's a couple of things that we can take away that I think we need to do. I think the standard of adjudicators stop fobbing off the lower sections with people who are trying to make a name for themselves, or people whose musical credentials don't really. It's not enough to be just have been reasonably successful at third, second section level, right? Those bands, it's even probably more important for a second or third section band to get the opinion of a real musician who's done things, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. It's just as important, let's put it that way, right? Because they can quickly tell that band either where they're going right or where they need to improve. I think we need to stop all this trying out people, right? The tryout is done through years of experience playing, proving yourself as a musician, then you become an adjudicator, right? Yeah. I don't buy this thing that, you can train somebody up. Something vaguely rings a bell with me. There was a book years ago called The Secret. Right? Did you ever see it? It was a smallish book. It had a red sort of wax seal stamp on it, and it was about this secret. If you thought a certain way, I think it was debunked and proven that the whole thing was just a money-making scam, right? Yeah. If you read this book and thought a certain way, everything, all your wildest dreams in the world would come true and all this stuff. And it was the sort of book you think, I wonder if that's, and then you look into it and you think, people said it was just a bloody scam, right? Yeah. And it was, but people fell for it, right? Mm. And it's almost like we're sort of manufacturing, come do our test and we'll make you an adjudicator and all that. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. No. An adjudicator is a peripheral thing, right? Mm. What we want, the people we want to be judged by should be good musicians. How can you prove you're a good musician? Not from your adjudications. How can you prove you've done it? Not even from winning contests. How does your band play? If you play if your band sounds like a ragman's trumpet blasting its way through, then I'm sorry, I'm not interested, right?
No.
I'm interested in the people who make music and what they can teach me, right?
Yeah.
We need people who are better than us all the time for all the sections.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've got that.
Well, Sandy, we're going to have to put our tin hats on when this podcast goes out.
Yeah,
we well knew that.
Hat, don't worry.
Yeah, I have. It's about an inch thick. If anybody wants to contact us, good or bad, it's Smith and Grezzy. It's the and is AND, Smith and Grezzy @gmail.com. And we'll gladly look at your emails and analyse thoughts on that and get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is just us wittering, unless people say, is this something that people are concerned about?
Yeah.
That's what we want to know, because
the postbag is proving it, isn't it?
Yeah, and there are some pretty damning emails on some of them, and I know contesting it's all subjective, blah blah blah. We know all that, but there seems to be a bit of unrest about things that have happened recently.
Yeah.
And we need to discuss things more openly. Yeah. And if you're not up for an open, honest, discussion, I don't know, where we go.
Yeah. Okay, that's all for this podcast for March. We'll see you again soon in April.